Good evening to everyone. I hereby call this February the 14th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Due to the Safe at Home order, all committee members are participating virtually. For virtual meetings, committee members will be muted until asked to be heard. When there is a vote, it will be necessary to take a roll call vote. A committee member will be recognized and state their vote. I'd like to recognize the city clerk, please, to call the roll.
Councilmember Larson,
Present.
Councilmember Burke, Councilmember Mundy,
Present.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present. And Councilmember Burke was at the last meeting, so we do anticipate that she'll join us for this one as well. I will say at this particular time, for those who are new to the committee meeting, what we like to do is recognize the brave men and women of our police department, our fire department, and our emergency management departments. We want to thank you for all of your work that you do to keep our citizens safe. You've all been extremely busy as of lately, but at this time, we'd like to pause and just say thank you. We will now move to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are typically approved with one sweeping motion unless a member of the council or committee requires an item to be pulled for discussion. Members of the committee or council, are there any items that we should pull for further consideration at this time? Make it known. If there are no items, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Larson is recognized.
I'd like to pull C1, please.
Item C1, any other items? Is there a motion to approve the balance?
Motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we will go down the roll. Councilman Mundy,
Aye.
Councilman Larson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Burke,
Yes.
and that is a yes from me. So the consent agenda is approved outside of item C1. Madam Clerk, would you please call item C1?
Item C1, information on quarterly key work item, capital project and performance indicator data.
We do have Ms. Martin and Mr. Tesh on the call. Councilman Larson, do you have a question or thought about item C1?
I have a very, very specific question, and I was going to ask it in finance, and maybe it's applicable here, and that is the first item on the report dealing with Bowman Gray and its status. If somebody could give me an update on where we are. I think that project's finished, is it not?
Yeah, I believe Mr. Rao may be the best person to speak to that. Mr. Rao, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Taylor, members of the City Council. Yes, Councilmember Larson, the project is completed. There might be a few what we call punch list items that we have to work through, but we were very fortunate that we had a mild November, and the last phase of the project which was resurfacing of the track was completed, I think probably within 2 weeks, and so the project is completed.
So if I may commentary just a bit, we are ready for racing season, concession stands, restrooms, everything open. All that work has been done remarkably fast. Congratulations to staff for such an expeditious handling of this. And we came in on budget, so I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, maybe even a little under budget. Congratulations to Frank L. Bloom and the team that put that project together. And I think it's a tribute that we can get back to racing and football at that location. It'll be a great service. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Larson, for your thoughts and comments on that. And thank you, Mr. Rao, for the brief comments. So that concludes our consent agenda. Considering item C1 was an informational item, we will now move to the general agenda. Madam Clerk, if you would please call item G1.
Item G1, recognition of Phillips Environmental Incorporated.
I'd like to recognize our fire chief, Chief Mayo. You have the floor, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, and greetings also to the members of the committee. I wanted to take a few minutes to recognize one of our biggest community supporters. And Mr. Chairman, if it pleases you, I'll ask everybody to turn their cameras off, and for the folks at Phillips to turn their camera on, and I think that'll make them come to the top. Phillips Environmental, and who you see here in their video feed is Ms. Pam Phillips and her sons, Luke, Landon, and Logan. And the Phillips have for years been great supporters of the Winston-Salem Fire Department. And the pinnacle of their support was demonstrated on January 31st when we made the decision to evacuate the scene at the Weaver fertilizer fire. And we were looking for a site where we could set up a command post outside that 1 mile evacuation zone. And Phillips Environmental has an office building on Perimeter Point there. It's just outside that 1 mile zone. And they allowed us to take that building over for a week. I mean, literally take it over. And they supported us. They not one time did they act like that we were in their way. They, kept us supplied in the initial hours with food and drinks, and brought a microwave in, and toilet paper and paper towels were always in the facility. They could not have been better hosts for that entire week. And we had at times 50 or 60 people in that building running that fire operation. So in recognition of that, we have see if I can get this to come in focus. There it goes. This is just for perspective. This is an 11-inch crystal. I call it a trophy because I don't know what else to call it, but it simply says, the Winston-Salem Fire Department recognizes Phillips Environmental Incorporated in sincere appreciation for your unwavering support and service to first responders. Thank you for making a difference in our community. And I am proud to be able to deliver this trophy to them in person, and just cannot thank them enough for their support of our organization. And again, more than just for the week of the Weaver fire, they have been supportive of us for years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chief. To the Phillips environmental team, first of all, we just want to thank you for your commitment and dedication to the city. We say all the time that small businesses are the backbone in this community. Well, you proved that in the event of this emergency. So thank you for your service. We appreciate you offering your space for the service of this community. And you saw the applause. We just want to give you an opportunity to have any words if you so see fit.
We just want to thank y'all for everything y'all did, and we're happy to do it, and y'all didn't have to do this.
And you didn't have to do what you did, so that makes two of us. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
We appreciate you guys for everything that you do, because without you, the community would be in bad shape. And we really appreciate each and every one of you. Chief Mayo, you're an outstanding gentleman. You showed, I respected you so much for the job that you did throughout that. It was a tough time, and we could see the hard work that everybody put into it, and the long hours and time that they spent to do this. And it was really inspiring to kind of be behind the scenes and see what you guys do. We have the utmost respect for our first responders, fire department, everyone in this county. You have shown us so much kindness. We appreciate it. We would do it all over again and are happy to help the city anytime. Just all you got to do is give us a call. And thank you guys for what you do.
Hey, be careful what you say, because we might just call on you, but we thank you for being a community hero. Thanks again.
That would be fine.
Happy New Year. We wish you much business success.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you can call item G2, please.
Item G2, presentation on application for 2022 staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant.
Chief Mayo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you again. This is an information item. Mr. Chairman, you and the committee probably remember that the application period for most fire grants from the Department of Homeland Security have such a short application window that we really can't follow exactly city policy like we should about getting authorization for local matching funds and that sort of thing. So because we couldn't get this through the process we're supposed to, we did want to make you aware that we have applied for a 2022 staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant. This would be for 15 personnel to help us support opening Fire Station 13, which will be this spring. This is a 3-year period of performance. There is no local cost share, with this exception of SAFER is it's a salary and benefit grant. It does not pay for recruiting costs, running newspaper ads and putting new employees in uniforms and turnout gear. So if awarded, the 3-year cost to the city is estimated to be $250,500, but the total project, if awarded, is $2,768,636. And I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Chief Mayo regarding the SAFER grant or its utilization to open up Fire Station 13? Councilman Larson.
Since this is going to be in the South Ward, Chief Mayo, thank you for making this application to bring more power, gunpowder as a word, to our force. Will this 13 people fully man that station?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. So 15 people would be my recommendation for placing a new engine company in service. So the answer to your question is yes, sir.
15 people, right? 15, I'm sorry. Stand corrected. Good. When will we know that? When will we know that it's August? Is that what?
Yes, sir. They start, the FEMA starts making awards, assuming that they're not managing some wildfire or, something has not pulled them away from grant duties, because that does happen sometimes. But we would expect the notice of awards to start going out about the 3rd week of August.
When do we think 13 will be online?
I think if things hold up as they have, we've been really fortunate with the progress of that station. I expect we're going to move into that station in April or May.
Okay. Very exciting. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Mundy.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. This is really a budgeting question. So if this happens and we need to match that or contribute our portion, this would happen in the next fiscal year. So is the assumption built into the budget that we will get this grant so that money is available, or would we have to have a budget amendment at that time?
Mr. Rao, did you want to answer that question, or Chief?
So, Ben, I'll let you get into the specifics of it, but before we applied, we checked with our budget analyst, and she was able to identify existing funds that would be able to cover the $250,000 that would be local expenditure.
So if that does not come to pass, that money would just go back to your general budget, Chief Mayo, for you to use with the fire department. Is that correct?
I don't think that's, I don't believe she did, the budget analyst did not identify it in our budget, but they were funds that are available, and I'm getting out of my area of expertise. She just told me that we had funds identified that we could use, and Mr. Rao might want to speak to that more specifically.
Mr. Rao?
Councilmember Mundy, I mean, we can verify that for you. Honestly, I've not worked very closely with the budget forecast for next year, but I think that what the budget staff advised, Chief, is typically kind of how we would approach a grant like this.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we are budgeting for these potential opportunities that could go one way or the other. I'd rather budget for them and let that money fall out at the bottom than to have to come back and try to squeeze more money out of the general fund or something like that. So just some of my budgeting preferences. Okay, thank you.
And Councilman Mundy, in the past, the city manager has brought these things forward when it's time to present his budget, but that's an excellent point. We can benchmark it and make sure we've got it in the process when the budget cycle comes back around. Excellent point.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Scipio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Mayo, on this SAFER grant, just refresh my memory. Have we applied for them in the past and received them?
Yes, ma'am. The one that I am most familiar with is we were awarded a 2016 SAFER grant for 15 people. And I know that we were awarded a SAFER grant prior to that, but it was before my time as fire chief, and I don't remember exactly when it was. But yes, ma'am, we have been awarded this grant at least twice in the past.
And if I heard you correctly, the actual grant award would be $2-something million over a 3-year period?
$2,768,636.
And it's all for salaries for those 15 people over 3 years.
Yes, ma'am. Salaries and benefits.
And benefits. How wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we're going to pray that you actually receive that grant. Thank you.
Any more questions for Chief Mayo on item G2? Seeing nothing further, this is also an informational item, so we will now move forward to item G3, please. Madam Clerk.
Item G3, presentation on application for fire prevention and safety grant.
Chief Mayo, this may be your last item on the hot seat. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Same thing here. This is a FEMA grant, and the application window was too narrow for us to get it through the proper approval process. But we wanted to make you aware again that we are applying for a fire prevention and safety grant that is due this coming Friday. This is a $40,000 project approximately, and there is a local match, 5%. So the local match is expected to be about $2,000 if this grant is awarded. And this project would be for placing smoke alarms in areas that we have identified through data analysis and mapping where we have a higher incidence of house fires.
Any questions for Chief Mayo? All right, that is his last information item. Chief Mayo, thank you for items 1, 2, and 3. You may be excused, sir. We appreciate everything you do for the city.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
Before Chief Mayo leaves, let me just comment if I could, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for taking.
You've been muted, Councilman Larson. Unmute, please, and try again.
How are we doing now?
You are on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Chief Mayo for his initiative and instigating initiating these grants. They oftentimes on a very tight schedule. And I remember when the first SAFER grant went through, he was on a tight schedule then to get it done, and he went ahead and took the initiative and got it done. I appreciate that. The city needs every nickel and dime we can get from underneath the cushions, and he's obviously looking around trying to find and pick up that change. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for the work on Station 13. I'm really looking forward to that opening up.
Thank you, Councilman Larson, and thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk, item G4, please.
Item G4, information on initiative for at-risk youth positive path program.
Members of the committee, as you are aware, historically, SOAR and Youth Build have virtually been companion programs. SOAR being more of a program that works with former justice-involved individuals, and Youth Build being a program that uses construction to focus on at-risk youth. Mr. Taylor and I have been in conversations and with his team in operations, and we've charged him with going back and looking at the Youth Build program. As you know, that program was once funded by the federal government. We now fund the program. So we're looking to shift the focus from just construction to focusing on at-risk youth with science, technology, engineering, and math, STEAM programs. Mr. Taylor, I believe you and your team have done an excellent job. Just wanted to kind of segue into the program, and you have the floor, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman Taylor, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, other members of the committee and council. I'm going to turn this presentation over to Ms. Faith Bartlett and Mr. Troy Sneed, and they will walk us through it.
Ms. Bartlett and Mr. Sneed, I hope you're well today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Chair, Councilmember Taylor, and all the committee members. My name is Faith Bartlett, Project Supervisor, and we're here today to present our ideas on Positive Path. Positive Path program, also known as P3, and next slide. Positive Path Program, as we refer to it as P3, where tonight in this presentation, we're going to discuss our mission, requirements, benefits, the main components of the program, as well as funding and how we will measure success. Next slide, please. So our vision and mission statement, what we plan to do is reshape the lives of our at-risk population through STEAM exposure, and STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We're going to also have mentors, hands-on training, and life skill classes. Staff will use a holistic approach and a strategic curriculum while modeling pro-social behavior. Next slide. Our requirements, you have to be between the ages of 18 to 24, living in Winston-Salem, and face one barrier, which can include being a youth or adult offender, low income, incarcerated guardian or caretaker, and a current or former foster youth. We ask that applicants lift at least 25 pounds and they pass a city background.
The benefits of the program is an individual has the opportunity to attain a GED or an NCCR certification, which stands for National Center of Construction, Education, and Research. Also, the STEM exposure and the mentorship is an excellent part of the program, as well as job shadowing, field trips. But I think the continued additional 6 months for supportive services is a nice addition to the program. Next slide, please. There are 4 components of the program. The outreach and admissions component, we're going to use targeted social media, as well as our community partners. We're going to use the Winston-Salem PD, the Sheriff's Office, and local news media. And also, the next component is what I call the preparation stage, is where we get individuals, we give them exposure, where we plan what they want to do, and we do the book work. Then we segue into the action stage, which in the action stage is when we start doing the hands-on training. We do the job shadowing and the field trips, as well as having working examples for them to do. Final component is the career transition. That is the supportive services where they have an opportunity to receive follow-up services and incentives, which include paying for uniforms, books, classes, or other materials in order to further their mission or the path that they're on. Next slide, please. The NCCR is an awesome certificate because we have 8 modules. And I think the best thing about this is that hands-on working example, we're able to use our departments in the city of Winston-Salem to do it. I just think it's going to be awesome for someone to do construction drawing and then go to the engineering and see this in real life. Next slide, please. And the other thing that separates this program from Youth Build is everyone doesn't have to just go into construction. We have several different tracks, including medical, which goes from CNA to phlebotomy. We have information technology, where we're going to be able to use our IS department for the same working examples. Next slide, please. The arts, and in the arts part, I think is awesome because the city of Winston-Salem is a city of art and innovation. So I think the exposure to the arts using the Arts Council is going to be an awesome addition to the program. The personal professional development for me is one of the most important parts of this program because it allows us to help them with some of these issues with anger management, conflict resolution, and different soft skills that will allow them to grow and be better suited for a pro-social society. Next slide, please. We also have an advanced manufacturing track, which includes welding. Next track, please. Here is a sample size of what a day in the program, a week in the program would look like. Next slide, please.
Mrs. Sneed, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
We are. If there's a slide, a couple of slides before this, it should be funding and budget.
All right.
Okay, this is our snapshot of our funding and budget. We plan to work with 8 participants for 26 weeks at the rate of at $30 hours per week at the city's minimum. We have also set funding aside for supportive services mentioned from Troy. This would include uniforms, GED testing, post-secondary education. Supplies, we've set aside $3,000, and that would include your basic office supplies as well as our construction materials so that we can do various projects. And as Troy mentioned, we have a new component, which is the 6-month follow-up. We're allocating $1,200 per participant, and this is the same as the supportive service line. So they'll again receive any uniforms they need, GED testing, or post-secondary education. And the total, including staff salaries, is $191,000, and salaries will be split. Also working with continuing to work with SOAR. And finally, we included the measurables, how we are going to measure the success of the program. We are going to look at retention rates, certificate attainment, weekly surveys, pre and post tests, recidivism rates, attendance, and special categories like who received their driver's license or bank account. That will be set aside for personal goals. And we will use this information to evaluate our program and adjust accordingly to make sure we meet the needs of the community. This slide here lists our partners. We are going to work with the local community colleges as well as the universities. We are going to work with the personal and professional development series. We're also going to work with financial pathways to do our budgeting sessions, Goodwill, Project Reentry, and the city departments that Troy has already mentioned for field trips and mentorships. And this is a neat little fact. There's actually over 1,100 miles of road in Winston-Salem, and our goal is to make sure that our apprentices are on a positive path. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. Bartlett or Mr. Sneed? Councilwoman Scipio, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. My question is, in my community, when I look at people on the street and the kids I've run into, they're really at risk more at 16 than 18. They've dropped out or something like that. Have you thought about starting with 16-year-olds as opposed to 18-year-olds? There's so many of them that are that age just wandering around.
Yes, we have started conversations with the younger generation, and that's a way that we're going to expand the program. In order to be a City of Winston-Salem employee, you have to be 18. That's why we selected the 18 age, but we do in the future plan to offer mentorships or a program for the younger population.
Okay.
Councilwoman Burke.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee. First of all, I love many of the concepts that have been shared. They remind me a lot of the features for the Transformational Center. I do want to ask about, well, first of all, let me say I agree with Councilmember Scipio. we have to really look at the age of the population of people that are in the greatest need. We cannot forget about 16, the age 16, and even right above. I'm thinking maybe a little bit younger as well. Yeah, I'm thinking about a little bit younger as well. It's never too early to learn trades and have opportunities for apprenticeship positions and maybe some kind of little paid internships. This can start as early as possible. I'm also a little, I wish that we could have that number of 8 every 26 weeks. That number needs to be a little bit higher. And that number really needs to be based on the data in the community. We have a great need. How can we address the great need that we have in a larger way? And then I wanted to ask about data. How often will we receive data, and what exactly will that data, that information provide for us?
All right, so Ms. Bartlett, there were a few questions that came up, one about data, the other one is Councilmember Scipio and Councilmember Burke mentioned about potentially moving the ages from 18 to 16. So if you can just speak to both of those and how you see fit.
Okay, well, I do want to mention that we had some serious conversations about the age. We were thinking that right now it's really hard to get into the school system where we need to be to talk to these participants. With COVID numbers, they're allowing very few volunteers in the schools, which was one of our thoughts, instead of trying to find an outside location for this type of program to at least start the mentorship. We want to be in the schools. So we're waiting for the COVID numbers to come down, as well as to be able to start a Saturday mentoring session. But we've had these talks, and we are planning to go to the lower age range. As far as the data, we are going to collect it within the 6 months and then provide that information after our program concludes.
Okay. And then I had another question. I wanted to know, how can we increase the number from 8 participants every 26 weeks? How can we really focus on increasing that number?
I'm smiling, Councilwoman Burke, because you are reading my mind and you are all in my head. We'd love to increase those numbers based off the amount of money we have for the program. I think they sort of started there and backed into it, but I'm gonna touch Mr. Taylor, Mr. Johnny Taylor, who's former director of operations, assistant city manager, to answer that question.
Good afternoon again. What we were doing this is an introductory phase of the program. We wanted to make sure that everybody had information about how the Positive Path program would work. However, what we plan to do is we wanted to get started. We realized that there are some other opportunities, but we wanted to use the data that we generate from the first phase of it to justify our request. So that's where we are. Some of the limitations we faced, as has already been mentioned, because of our inability to have close contact and to get into some places due to COVID. But we realize that there is a tremendous opportunity here to reach other age groups, and that is definitely a part of what we have in mind.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Councilman Mundy.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. Thank you for the presentation. I think this is great. I also agree with some of my colleagues that it'd be so nice to touch a younger age group, but I don't think it's an either or. I think that this is probably the right program for 18 plus. I could use a little more explanation on how this is structured. Are the staff that would execute this, are they city employees? Is this a third party that comes in? And then as a follow-up to that, this seems like one of those programs that is both transformative and hits right on our strategic initiatives of economic mobility. which says to me it should qualify for ARPA money. So could we enhance the program through ARPA? Those were the, I guess, the two. The third thing was, one of the things that we seem to be lacking with small businesses, medium-sized businesses in our WMBE program are finding those companies that are owned by minorities. So I would love to see you add in the program for those individuals who really show promise, an entrepreneurship component that would help them become business owners and not just employees of some other business.
Councilman Mundy, to answer your question, I believe that this program is ARPA eligible, and when we have our committee meeting of the whole, this may come up for council consideration. So that's an excellent thought there. Ms. Bartlett, as far as the operations, Councilman Mundy's questions about just simply how we will operate the program. Are these going to be city staffers? Will we be working in conglomerate with other programs and universities? Who will operate the program?
The program will be administered by city staff. It will be myself and Troy Sneed. It will play a dual role and continue working with our SOAR program. And our community partners will be our local universities and colleges. We're going to work with an outside consulting firm to help us with our what we call a professional branding class, what goes over conflict resolution, resume writing, excuse me, just things to make sure, topics to make sure that they not only obtain a job, but may keep the job. And we're also going to work with Goodwill as well as several other nonprofit. And as Troy mentioned, it's very exciting to work with our other city departments like PFM, risk management, to give us real life working examples of what we're speaking about during class.
And also to Councilmember Mundy's point about entrepreneurs, we would have from BIA, we would have Stephen Harrison come in and talk to them about starting businesses and things. So that's always something we do. We even do that with our SOAR program. So that thing I think is we could work with that, and maybe Alan Younger to be able to do it. So we are connected. So that is definitely a plus for us.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilman Larson, Councilwoman Scipio, then Mayor Pro Tem Adams. We'll go down the list. Councilman Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed in the requirements that the two categories, one lists youth and adult offender, and then the other one was incarcerated guardian or caregiver. What is the relationship between this program and the courts?
Ms. Bartlett.
Yes, we attend the reentry council, and we are connected with the courts. We're connected with other nonprofits working in the reentry world. So we mainly use these type of relationships for referrals.
I mean, part of the point is that 18-year-olds have a certain amount of autonomy. Certainly 21-year-olds do as well. We start talking about breaking down an earlier age group. You should have graduated from high school by 18 years, I guess. And those are the GED and driver's licenses and all the things you were talking about are certainly useful in that sort of transitional age. And I think that's a very useful program. I don't know how transferable it is to people that are, say, sophomores in high school and things like that do not have the driver's license yet or do not have the ability to get to work and are still within the household, for example. It seems to be a different kind of audience, but I think it is an important audience. I hope we can figure out a way to address them as we try to get in early in this process of education and training and youth development that steers them away from crime, basically. So I think this is a good start. I don't know that 8 people is enough, or 6, 8 people. It's going to be enough to make the impact that we want to do, but it's a good way to start, I suppose.
Thank you, Councilman Larson. Councilwoman Scipio.
Yes, I have one question and a comment. Is the intent of this program to have employees for our city? Are we expecting people who complete this program to be hired to fill some of our vacancies in the city?
Good afternoon, Councilmember Scipio. I would say that that is definitely one of the goals due to our shortage and being able to find employees. These individuals would be an excellent resource once they complete the program. It would offer us an opportunity to get to see them somewhat in a bit of an interview as they go through the program and hopefully help us to fill some of our vacancies.
My comment and why I asked that is that this is for 8 people, that's $23,000 we're investing in each person over that 6 months. That's a whole lot of money to invest for anybody, any individual. And so I would like for us to have the benefit of that investment to the extent that we can make that happen. I think it's to our advantage because my question is, for $23,000, what's the option that other options we could do with these 8 people? And how do we make, if it's gonna be that much on an ongoing basis, how do we sustain that? We've got to figure out, how do we sustain a program that costs that much to get workers? So that's just how my comment. And Mr. Taylor, that's an interesting beard and mustache. I haven't seen you in a couple of days.
You could be coming to
It's
his
an interesting look.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I'm always excited when we can create or innovatively think of the next. My question is that, has this group talked to other entities, organizations, schools in the city that have similar programs that are already there, and that you guys can kind of benchmark or either partner with? Because I know Forsyth Tech has a serious program. I know Winston-Salem State has Upward Bound, and I know there are other programs out there. I'm just hoping, as the council or committee has stated, that we're gonna have to start learning to collaborate with others that are already doing stuff and tie into that so that they have buy-in to help facilitate the cost and hopefully the interests of the participants. I'm not, as people say, we do a lot of things, but there's some things we don't do well. And that's when you got to go get the subject matter experts to come in. There's much passion in everything that we have, that we want to do good. We got to go pull on some other people that have been doing this work to help us understand that it doesn't move at the speed of light. So I would hope, or I'm asking, have we talked to at least 3 or 4 that are doing this that we can collaborate and partner with? Thank you.
Ms. Bartlett, Mr. Taylor, Ms. Bartlett, did you want to weigh in on that one?
Yes, we have a strong relationship with Next Gen, and Next Gen, short for Next Generation. That is through the NC Career Center. It is actually a statewide program. They do have programs in Winston and Greensboro. We are in contact with the office in Winston-Salem, and they have provided us with referrals. They have provided us with caseworkers. And always depending on their funding, they're able to provide similar services that we had mentioned in our follow-up and supportive services. So we're able to offset some of the cost working with them. They do work with the same population, but they do go to that lower number, 16 to 24. And again, we thought about that 16 number for this first entry phase, but to be a city employee, you have to be 18. I know with that program, it's not as hands-on as our program. We will be with these apprentices Monday through Friday, 30 hours a week. Their program is relies more on kind of the ambition or motivation of the participant to show up to their weekly appointments. They do provide on-the-job training with local companies. However, the pay rate is not as high as the city minimum. But we do use them so that we don't reinvent the wheel, and we do use their expert advice to help us guide our apprentices on their path for career exploration.
And thank you, Ms. Bartlett. I see Mr. Taylor wanted to weigh in on this one, and then we'll go to Councilman McIntosh. Mr. Taylor, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Adams. Your comments were duly noted, and we will be expanding the number of individuals or subject matter experts that we connect with and partner with.
And Mr. Taylor, Mr. Chair, if I may, before this deal kicks off, I think for me, the council, we'd like to see the curriculum. You know what I mean? The what is going to happen, how it's going to happen, who's going to make it happen, what's the timeline? Because in a PowerPoint, and I appreciate it, I did a lot of them in my day, but at the end of the day, again, we have to answer to the people. And just like the prior meeting, we got to make sure that it's tight. So I would hope to see a curriculum or a syllabus on what this program's intent is. Okay?
And
Yes.
a syllabus or curriculum will be presented. Yes.
Excellent points and conversation all around the board. We'll finish up here with Councilman McIntosh. You have the floor. You've been so patient. Thank you, sir.
That's fine. I kind of feel like we're on an episode of Shark Tank. The investors, who is the city of Winston-Salem, were putting in $23,000 per student. I know what I want to see is, how does this thing scale? How do we make this 80 students? How do we make this 800 students? Who do we pull in as technical advisors and partners who can lower that cost per student down to where it's really scalable? 8 people's great, but it does not make that much of an impact in the city. And we want programs that make an impact, a big impact. So let's figure out how this thing ramps. Where does it go? How do we get it there? How do we get to 800 students a year? To me, that's what I want to see.
Thank you, Councilman McIntosh. All good conversation. I know staff will go back, listen to this conversation again, compile the information, come back with an updated program, and we'll have something that we can present to the council and to the people, including some sort of curriculum so that you can follow the steps of the positive path participants. With that being said, we have exhausted our time for this item. Are there any further comments or final comments on item G4? Seeing nothing further, this informational item. Thank you, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Sneed, Ms. Bartlett, for your input to this conversation. We're looking forward to the program.
Thank you.
Item G5, please.
Thank you.
Item G5, Cure Violence Global Assessment Report.
All right, before we do anything, I want to recognize Assistant City Manager Tony. Thank you, Mr. Tony, for your work with Cure Violence. You have attended all the meetings. You've been our liaison between the county and all the other participants, and you've done an excellent job vetting this program back and forth. So I want to recognize you, Ms. Tony, and see if you have any comments before we kick off the program.
Thank you, Chair Taylor, and good evening again to the committee and council members. You are correct, Councilmember Taylor. This is something we've been looking at over the last several months. As you all are aware, the number of homicides and crime has continued to increase, and it's a national trend. But we've zoomed in locally to get a grip on where these crimes are occurring. This program, and through an assessment, they did show that Police Beat 222 has the highest number of crime, and we're only a month and a half into this year, and we're approaching our 8th homicide. And so despite all of the efforts that the Winston-Salem Police Department has put in place, we still see these numbers continue to rise. And so Cure Violence, we started exploring just as an alternative to traditional law enforcement programs and means to solve violent crimes. Cure Violence Global looks at violent crimes as a public health issue. They see it as a contagious disease that can be treated using disease control and behavior change methods. And so they went through, after our steering committee meetings, and thank you, Chair. Violence Global team conducted an assessment. So they actually physically visited our community. I actually had the pleasure of joining some of the Cure Violence Global staff in some of the meetings and part of their assessment exploration of our city. And so now they have put together a report, and there are members here who are willing to give some key points and updates to some very brief overview of the report. And so I see Brent Decker, and I don't know if the clerk's office is controlling their video, but if you could let Brent Decker, and I see Eric Johnson, 2 of the Cure Violence Global staff are here.
Mr. Decker and Mr. Johnson, are you with us?
Hey. Yeah, I'm here, but yeah, the video won't. Oh,
and I'm Joaquin Tanky. I've been running Zoom for Brent all day, and I didn't get to change the name.
All right. Good to see you.
It's nice to
how y'all doing? Hey, Trey.
Can y'all hear me?
We can, sir. You have the floor.
Cool. My internet connection is a little shabby. It's nice to meet everybody. Nice to see everybody. I'm Eric Johnson, National Coordinator for Strategic Partnerships for Cure Violence Global. Greetings, good evening to everybody. I got my colleague Rock with me, and he and I came down in December to complete this assessment. And basically, like Miss Tony was just saying, you know, with our model, right, we don't just one thing that I think needs to be said is, with our model, we have to make sure that our approach and our model fits, you know, whatever city or town that we're going into, because you know, all violence isn't a result, or all gun violence and shootings isn't a result of, you know, things that we typically see. Some stuff is interpersonal, some stuff can be domestic. And so we have to conduct a thorough assessment to make sure that this model, this violence, our public health approach to reducing violence would fit. And what we found in the city of Winston, just briefly, is first question is there governmental or non-governmental agency with the capacity and the will to implement this Cure Violence Global with fidelity? And we found that yes, in Forsyth County in the city of Winston-Salem has high levels of capacity with will and potential commitment implementing the model. To invest significant time, resources in the assessment, we created the Cure Violence Steering Committee that met weekly, like she said, and
Mr. Johnson, are you still with us?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you were talking about the Cure Violence Committee meeting that met weekly, and you cut out on us from there.
I apologize. My internet is really, really shaky, y'all. Basically, yes, we found that in Forsyth County and Center of Winston-Salem, it has high levels of capacity, will, potential commitment to implement the model. The second question is, does official or unofficial data exist about violent incidents to focus, monitor, measure the implementation? And basically, yes. And so how we got the data was from the shooting and homicides from the police department. And we mapped the target area according to that. The third question and fourth question is, does official and unofficial data exist to determine if the CVG model is appropriate and identify the highest risk target population for focus and implementation? And again, that was yes. The available Data identified chronic hotspots where shootings and killings have persisted. The dynamics of the area are appropriate and consistent with other areas where the CVG model has been implemented. The data also demonstrates that the nature of the violent incidents is consistent with other areas where CVG model has been implemented. 5, do community organizations exist who fit the CVG criteria to serve as partners to implement the model? And again, that was yes. So the implementation at the community level requires identification of community-based organizations capable of providing oversight of the day-to-day program operations. The criteria for community-based implementation partners is as follows: a mission in sync a mission in sync with cure violence model and health approach, strong ties to the target community, viewed as credible, trusted, and neutral by target community and highest risk individuals. Are they able to participate in recruitment of potential workers? Are they able and willing to hire and work with individuals with criminal backgrounds or come from the groups in conflict and target area? Do they have a history of direct violence prevention or related work? Do they have experience of managing grants and contracts, experience producing detailed reports on a regular basis, and the organizational capacity to support, supervise staff, and provide fiscal oversight? And then, so is there a community organization that fit the cure violence model criteria? We said yes. Organizations exist in the community which meet the criteria. In the 222 area, there are a number of options for implementation through existing CBO, a CBO with the fiscal agent, or through the health department. There also, we found the hospital-based program with Novant and Wake Forest Baptist. They have hospital responders work for the CBO or health department and coordinate with the hospital. The hospital responders work, or they work for the hospital directly and coordinate with the CBO health department. And sometimes they're deployed to the site or community when not responding to the hospital during times that they're not working. That they are working. 2 more. So do individuals exist who could fulfill the role of violence interrupters or outreach workers? So the best change agents for interrupting violence have in many cases lived the same type of life of those who are being affected by violence and are connected to the community where the initiative is being implemented. And some of those characteristics is high credibility with the highest risk individuals and groups in the target area, have relationships or what we like to call as inroads with the highest risk individuals in the target area. If they have prior ties to gangs or crews or cliques, in the target area, they may or may not have been incarcerated for violent offense, reside or live or is from the target area. One main thing is they no longer active in violence, criminal activity, or substance use, and they can work a part of the team. So with that, we did find that there are individuals that there are in your area that who will be able to fulfill the role of violence interrupter and or outreach worker. And then what we do is we use hiring panels to hire all the violence interrupters and outreach workers, would include representatives from the implementing agency, i.e. Forsyth County, the community-based partnering organizations, local faith leaders, residents, community residents, law enforcement, to ensure that the best candidates are selected for each target area. The pre-screening checklist to ensure that sufficient background works as staff member. Briefing form to assist in educating all members of the panel of the goals and objectives of the hiring panel. Did I go out?
You did, sir, but we were able to follow you.
Can y'all still hear me?
We can.
Hello?
We're with you.
You can hear me now? Okay, so all right. So the panel briefing to assist educating all members of the panel goals, objectives, and hiring panel of the participants to ensure that the strongest candidates are selected. And then the last thing is the initial programming recommendation, program size, budget, and our technical assistant. So based upon the size and scope of the violence and potential target areas, we recommend that a program of 8 to 9 staff to cover 222 area. This would be considered a medium-sized program. The estimated budget for setting up a program of this size and scope is about 564 to 614,000 a year for implementation. The hospital program that we recommended staff 4 to 5 with an estimated budget of 230,000. And then our technical assistance is 15% of the budget. We asked in our assessment, and that's kind of what it looked like as Rock and I spent those days at in Winston.
Have you finished your presentation, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And members of the committee and council, as you've heard with any employment situation, both parties want to make sure that they're good fits for each other. So what you've heard from Cure Violence is they've done an assessment, and it seems like they feel that the city of Winston-Salem is a good fit for them. And we're still working through, which I believe I know the answer to, whether Cure Violence is a good fit for us. The county is also considering Cure Violence as well. So we just wanted to have them come, bring their information to the city council for your information and see if you have any questions. So at this time, are any questions for the Cure Violence staff? Councilman Mundy.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. Talk to us a little bit about your success rate, some of your other markets that you've been in, how you measure success, what you've seen, and kind of how long do you have to operate before you can see some progress in reducing crime and violence?
Yeah, I mean, we've been evaluated. You know, you guys can look on our website, but we've been evaluated for the last 20 years, you know, from different evaluators. And, you know, when done with fidelity, right? That's why that's why at Cure Violence Global, every part has to be right. It's got to be right. Those elements that I just went over, you got to have the right workers, the right CBO. All of that stuff has to be right. So when those things are right, and the fidelity of the model is there, then we have seen up to like 80% reduction in shootings and killings. So, and I was just reading the other day, there's an article out. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, over what period of time that you've seen that reduction?
So in the first year, I mean, it's up to, you know, in that first year of implementation.
Okay.
You know, I've seen it's as small as 20%, and it's up to, you know, as high as 80%.
In a year's time. Okay.
Chair Taylor, can I just add to that?
It's
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Mundy, first, they do an excellent job. Cure Violence Global does an excellent job of data collection and analysis of all the cities that they have this program in. And so you can see the trend data on the reduction of crime as Cure Violence has come into a city. And so one of the things we'll start with is a baseline data, which we have basically from the number of shootings that have occurred in that very specific target area. And then that baseline, we'll see any progress that happens after the Cure Violence Global team is implemented, if that is something this city council would like to do. The other thing is the reason why they are effective early is because they utilize local people to participate in the program. So they're not like outside coming in and trying to implement this. They, even through their assessment, kind of identified people who there was already this trust built in communities and neighborhoods. They went with them and kind of saw how well certain areas responded to these community leaders and people who say they are kind of doing the work. And so that's why choosing people like that, and then they train them, they can immediately start making an impact. So I think it can happen pretty soon.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. Councilman Mundy, are your questions been satisfied, sir?
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that information.
Thank you. Councilwoman Scipio.
Oh, thank you. I was question about the report. I'm just a little confused only because I haven't read all of it. What's CBO? When we're talking about the funding, it looks like there's a sample cost for CBO, and I wasn't sure what that stood for.
Community-based organizations.
Okay, so when we look at in the report, the budget, so the first one is if it's a community-based organization, and that budget comes up to $564,750. And then there's another one, I assume, if the program's run through the health department, and that's how you get the additional staffing from the health department, and bringing that total to 614. And then there's another one that talks about hospital response program. And am I correct to assume that you have the hospital response program, whether you go with the health department, management, or the CBO?
So I can answer that. There is funding already been, I believe, there's been funding already identified by the hospital. And when we conducted our assessment, we found that there is a need for a hospital-based program, right? And so that's one thing. And then, our assessment also found that the best way to get really I'm in Atlanta, and I ran a hospital-based program in conjunction with the city. In conjunction with the community. And I just believe, and we believe that when there's capacity to do both simultaneously, you get the best bang, right? Because whenever the victims come to the hospital, they're gonna come, whenever they get shot, they're gonna come to the hospital. And that's that critical moment that we like to use to be able to change their life, right? With hospital responders. But the flip side to that is that they're gonna go back to the community once they're discharged. So we've developed a hospital-based and database as well, to where they are working together with that warm handoff. So yes, ma'am, you are correct in assuming that there's a hospital-based program that we're saying that you guys need. And there's a community-based program as well that we're saying that you guys also need. And the funding, like I mentioned before, for that hospital-based program, the recommendation I think was $230,000. And then the community is the number that you talked about earlier.
But I guess the county would be running the health department program that takes up that $600,000. Is that what that?
So if I may,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Patrice.
Yeah, if I may just jump in. So what you see in the report are options, Councilmember Scipio. And so they've listed out some, yes, community-based organizations. If you actually scroll up even further, you'll see kind of a org chart of what that potentially would look like. This would be a joint effort with the county. So they are expecting us to pay, say, 50% of the cost of whatever model that we choose, if we choose to enter in this type of agreement. Eric is right that, I just got an email from Downey Lambeth's office about the $500,000 funding for hospital-based violence reduction as well. And so that could be another piece if we choose. So after they just did the assessment, the report, they provided some options for us to consider. At the end of the day, it may be even a scaled down version of this if we wanted to really target in some areas. So they've just done this assessment report. And then after that, we'll have some more conversations about, is this something we think is right? And then how much we want to, and the county's already asked, how much is the city willing to pay? So even if the health department, even if we choose the health department as the implementing partner, it would still be a joint effort on behalf of the city.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. And I do want to say some of the money that came through the state budget that went to the hospitals got into that budget as a result of Representative Lambeth And, you know, we don't call names a lot. And I just want to say to the council, this isn't partisan politics. This is people working across the aisle to solve a problem. And I just want to thank Representative Lambert for helping to make that happen. Are there any more questions for Mr. Rock, Mr. Johnson, or Ms. Tony regarding cure violence? Mr. Larson's recognized.
What is the next step? What's the next step?
Ms. Tony, you want to speak to the next steps? I know the county has been reviewing this as well. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair Taylor. Councilmember Larson, the next step is probably the steering committee will reconvene and have some conversations. Prior to that, though, this particular area is actually in the Northeast Ward. So I do want to have a conversation with Councilmember Burke, just kind of on the model, her thoughts, and if this is something that she supports as well. And once we kind of get some momentum from the city around this, then the county staff would get together and try to repackage one of these sample options and then propose that as an action item for funding. We budgeted maybe $200,000 of ARPA funding as part of a crime prevention plan already to consider cure violence global. As you see in the sample budgets, it's going to cost more than that. And like I said, we can repackage it, scale it down, however we choose is the best way to go. So this would be now next step, internal conversations with Councilmember Taylor, Councilmember Burke, and then back with the county, the steering committee, and then we'll bring back a proposal to public safety and then the city council.
Ms. Tony and also Councilmember Scipio.
Ms. Scipio, if you can hold on for, Ms. Scipio, if you could hold on for one moment,
okay,
please. Councilman Larson was speaking, and I promise I'm gonna come right to you.
I'm sorry.
Just to follow up, do we expect to see this as we prepare our budget for next year? Is this going to be a topic for discussion?
This is a ARPA consideration because what we would see it as is a pilot program, and we would fund it for 3 years. And then if we see results that we like, then it might be an actual, do we implement it into the budget as an ongoing item that we find effective as a crime reduction tool. So the ARPA is kind of one-time money, but we have 3 years to spend it. So this would be an ARPA recommended item.
So we're going to be looking at ARPA on the 28th, 29th of next month, right? Is that when we're trying to hammer out ARPA on the end of next month meeting? So, I mean, we got $40 million or whatever in ARPA that we haven't dedicated yet. And I'm trying to begin to mind around what this means in the needs that the city has. I mean, I think it's an interesting program. But I do think we got to look at the budget pretty hard on this one because it's going to be a big chunk of change. If we're looking to ARPA, particularly to fund it, it's going to be impactful. So I'm just trying to understand where this is going to fit in our budget deliberations, both for operating budget and for ARPA funding or whatever else we might have, what other pots of money we might be able to draw on as we look at trying to fund this program over multiple years. Help me keep that in mind as we go and help keep the council abreast, because we're going to have, this is going to obviously have to come back up in some realistic way, probably within 30, 60 days.
Thank you, Councilman Larson. I saw Ms. Tony nod her head, and I believe we've heard you loud and clear.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilwoman Scipio, my apologies. You have the floor.
I'm so sorry. I was just trying to remind Miss Tony that 222, a significant part of it is in the East Ward.
Yes, ma'am. You're correct.
So as we talk to Ms. Burke, we're going to talk to Ms. Scipio too. Thank you.
Duly noted.
We're looking forward to working with you both. And before I come to Councilman Monday, one of the things that came up in the Cure Violence Steering Committee meetings is whether or not we as a city council have the political will to get this done. And I talked to the Cure Violence team, and I told the members of the committee that I believe that this council did have the political will to get this done. We've got to be creative. We've got to work, every tool that we have with law enforcement, we have to also bring other tools to put in our toolbox. And I believe Cure Violence Global is the answer. Councilman Mundy, you have the floor. You on mute, sir.
As soon as I started talking, I realized that. System Manager Tony answered my question about sustainability and the finite time we have to use ARPA money and what the potential plans may be after. But one of the things I like about this program is it does engage some grassroots organizations that are out there who really want to affect this, but they might not have all of the tools in their toolbox. They might not have the organization, so they're not nearly as effective as they could be if we could bring them under one roof, one organization. And it sounds like this is the program that can do that. So I'm just very hopeful that this is something we can implement in Winston-Salem.
Well, based off the general consensus of the conversation I've heard, it sounds like that we're supportive of the program. We have a few kinks to work out, and it sounds like these conversations will spill over into our ARPA meetings that we're going to have later this month. So I believe we have the political will to get this done. Ms. Tony, as information comes forward and is available, would you bring that forward to us for information and consideration? We want to thank Mr. Rock, Mr. Johnson for being here today representing Cure Violence Global. We appreciate your work in the community. We're looking forward to putting together a plan to work with you in the city of Winston-Salem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Tony, is there any further business that you have for the good of the order?
No further business, Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, ma'am. Members of the council, members of the committee, is there any further business that should be considered for the good of the order? Seeing no further business, I hereby consider this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.